Welcome to the InnovaBuzz podcast, where we share all kinds of tips, advice, and interview guests on all things innovation and leadership in modern marketing. Each episode is a conversation with inspiring people who make wonderful contributions to our knowledge in these areas and spark curiosity and ideas to pursue. Join me, Jurgens from InnovaBuzz, and let's get into today's masterclass on this InnovaBuzz podcast.
Focus on being two things in every conversation you have. Be interested in the other person and what they're trying to accomplish and what their goals are, and be interesting. And if you do those two things and you have a connected conversation, it will become very clear, it has been in my experience, what's interesting and what people pick up on and what they go with. And as you have more of those connected conversations, you're going to find yourself repeating a lot of the same things, weaving in new things, and it's going to take some time, but you're going to have a story that you're telling. And as you get better and better at telling that story, it's going to get more interesting because you're going to learn what are the pieces of your story that are interesting.
Hi there, Innovator. It's great to be back with another episode. I hope you've had an awesome week so far. I trust too that you enjoyed my recent conversations with Sunny Hahn of Atlas Solutions and with Joel Kletke of Case Study Buddy. I'm really excited today to have on the InnovaBuzz podcast as my guest an 11-time Emmy Award winning producer and director who also runs the world's largest celebrity branding agency. His name is Nick Nanton. Nick started his journey as a musician, having found his love of music at a very young age, and he wanted to become the president of a record label. He decided to pursue a law degree so that he had a professional qualification, but his plan was to never work a day as a lawyer. However, after a failed business venture, his business partner convinced him to combine his skills in law and in entertainment to work with celebrities. Together, they grew their celebrity branding agency into the largest in the world. Nick, to date, has served over 3,000 clients in more than 36 countries and has worked alongside a long list of celebrities that includes Mark Cuban, Richard Branson, and Steve Forbes, just to name a few. Nick has authored over 24 books and has produced over 50 documentaries, and he's been described by Larry King as the world's biographer. Nick's mission is to help people help people. A quick promotional message from our sponsor, InnovaBuzz. We help coaches and consultants build professional credibility, engage their target audience, and connect with their ideal clients. To do that, you need to have absolute clarity about who your ideal clients are and what your message is to them and how you can help them. Now, to help you get that clarity, take a look at our Marketing Master mini class. In less than 30 minutes, you'll gain absolute clarity on who your ideal client is and how you can communicate with them to build and strengthen an engaging, enduring relationship. Access that Marketing Master mini class at innovabuzz.co/Marketing Master. It's completely free. It's my gift to you as my podcast listener, and you don't even have to share your email with me. In our discussion today, Nick talked to me about gathering people around you that have specific skills and are passionate about those skills in areas where maybe you don't have those skills. He shared with me how focusing on delivering and explaining the value is key, and that price is only an issue when the value is a mystery. And he explained how to find your unique ability and articulate your unique story. Without further ado then, let's fly into the hive and get the buzz from Nick Nanton. Hi, I'm your host Jurgens from InnovaBuzz, and I'm really excited to welcome to the InnovaBuzz podcast today from Winter Park, Florida in the USA. It's kind of a misnomer, I think, Florida and winter. Nick Nanton, who's the co-founder of the Dixon Nanton Celebrity Branding Agency. He's also a lawyer. He's the author of more than 24 best-selling books, and he's an 11-time Emmy Award-winning film producer and director. Nick has produced and directed more than 50 documentaries, and he's also sold out a Broadway show. So welcome to the podcast, Nick. It's a great privilege to have you as my guest today.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
George Bryant, who was our guest on episode 226 of the InnovaBuzz podcast, suggested that we talk to you, Nick. So big hello to George.
Hey there, George. Thanks for the recommendation.
Now, you're known for telling stories that connect because you focus on people, and your mission is to help people help people, and by getting their stories out to the right audience. So that's something that I'm quite keen to learn more about, and you help clients tell their stories so that they can share their unique gifts with the world. So I think that's a very great place to start. But before we get on to storytelling, tell me a little bit more about your background. How did you get from being a lawyer and going into courtrooms and defending, or I don't know, maybe you're a prosecutor defending clients, telling stories there, to a career in celebrity branding and marketing, and then into filmmaking?
Yeah, so it's a pretty non-traditional path, but I grew up as a musician, and my brother, I had one older brother, and we were immigrants. My family's from Barbados originally. I've been there for 300 years, and as we were growing up, my parents told my brother and I, "You can do anything you want to do in life, just make sure you get a profession." And we both said, we're not interested in that." And then he went to medical school, so I had to do something. I wasn't going
Yeah.
to get into medical school, so I went to law school with the goal of never practicing a day of law in my life, but being running a record label or a music business. And while I was in law school, all of the Napster stuff happened. The whole business, really changed and was sent reeling, quite frankly. And it's started to recover the last 5 to 6 years, and I'm still addicted to the music business. I still write a lot of music. I have a publishing deal in Nashville. I write a lot of country and pop music. But when I was in law school, I partnered up with my mentor and current business partner. We've been in business for 17 years together, and he saw along the lines of the work that I was doing for bands and sort of creating their brands from scratch. And he said, Nick, if you did this, uh, created these brands and the positioning, all the stuff you're creating for these bands for business people, you might actually make money and be able to feed your family. And I thought that sounded good. So we decided to start our agency. We had some twists and turns along the way, like everybody does, but I think it's 13 years later now. We've helped more than 3,000 clients in 60 countries across the world, grow their personal brands. Along that journey, the more I would meet and interact with my clients and others, and get into in-depth conversation, I was just so fascinated by everyone's stories. And I decided, I had done some music video editing and stuff, just messing around in college and law school. I decided I wanted to try my hand at a short film, see what would happen. Found a great story about a little boy named Jacob who had Down syndrome and was 6 years old and played t-ball, baseball at the time. And I read the story, and his dad had sent it to me, and I met his dad randomly in an airport, and we, just started talking, and then whatever, one thing led to another. We exchanged email addresses. He sent me this story, and it was a beautiful story, but I knew that no one's ever really going to probably see it. It was going in a local newspaper. So I went to my mastermind group at the time and said, "Hey, if you guys will help fund this movie, I'm going to go. It's going to be short. I'm going to try to do my best, but I'm going to try to go. I don't even know what that means. I'm going to try to go win an Emmy, see what happens." So we put the story out. We raised quite a bit of money. I produced it, directed. We raised quite a bit of money for special needs kids. Got 2 Emmy nominations, won an Emmy, and decided probably maybe I should do some more of that. And then over the course of the years, I made my first film that was in 2010. So now, of course, of like 9, almost 10 years, I've just kept digging for the best stories I can find. So I would say that it's not as unlikely as it sounds on paper. I've always been chasing sort of the entertainment side of things, whether it's music or I didn't expect I'd get into filmmaking, but I got in. It now makes a lot of sense to me now because I coach a lot with Dan Sullivan, a strategic coach. He's a top business coach in the world, and to entrepreneurs. And Dan talks about really just discovering and nurturing your unique ability. And I'll take it from Dan's quote because we're very we test out very similar in a lot of different tests, and he shared with me his unique ability was having great conversations, and that's truly is mine. And the reason why film works so well for me is because all I have to do is have great conversations, and I just fill in everyone around me from from cinematographers to editors to music, to sound mixing, and they all do their job, and all I have to do is have a great conversation. So for me, like podcast, no problem. If
Mm.
it requires more than me having a great conversation, I'm probably not real interested. But if I can have a conversation with somebody, I'll do it. And so, so we still work with clients all across the globe. I spend 80% of my time, I guess, probably making films around the world. I'm directing 15 films right now, and then I have a team that runs the agency, and then I spend about 10% of my time in the agency, just working through different new initiatives and stuff. Maybe a little more than that, and then about 10% of my time I spend songwriting in Nashville and delivering my the songs I've committed to my publisher and helping new artists release music. So that's my life.
That's great. Well, it sounds like you're really busy too. Uh,
Between that and the 3 kids and my wife who still likes me, yes, it's very busy.
um, yeah, I'm fascinated the storytelling aspect. Going back to the branding work you do with clients, was that where you developed the storytelling approach? What, or maybe other question, what was your approach to the to branding somebody?
Yeah, so yes, I think I learned it along the way, but what I saw so many people missing sort of missing the boat in their branding and positioning because look, at the end of the day, if you don't know someone's story, they're just another person. I mean, it's just the way
Mm,
it is. And so when you figure out that you know, you can spend all the money you want, and not that you shouldn't do a great job at creating logos and color schemes and look and feel and all that sort of stuff. You should, but people start there, and that's not where you should start. And so I learned to make it just as easy as I could to try to help my clients get it. That I always just say your brand is simply your story, and branding is just storytelling. And a great brand is a story that people like to share for you. And so as I was digging in, working with all sorts of uh, regular businesses, financial advisors, doctors, dentists, lawyers, whatever it was, the world views you as a commodity until you share your story. And when, look, there's only one reason why you and I are sitting here in a podcast halfway across the world. It's because of what led us to this moment. And when you don't sort of honor the things that led you to these moments, you miss the whole boat. When you stop and think about what led me on that path of going to law school and then staying in music and then working with business people. Like for someone who wants to build their personal brand, to be known as the best in their industry or the celebrity in their industry, I would venture that I'm the most uniquely suited person in the world to do that because of the journey I took. Now, I there's plenty of missed turns, wrong turns. I mean, there's all that, and as you get into different styles of storytelling, more of those things come out. But at the end of the day, this is where I've ended up for a reason, and so it's my story that makes me that I share makes me have best-selling books, or gets me on a podcast, or gets me in a speaking engagement, or gets me a client because people say, "Oh, that story," whether they say it consciously or subconsciously, that story makes sense to me. I think
mm.
this guy can help me, and so I really just saw so many entrepreneurs missing the boat of just trying to do really corporate slick stuff. Not that it shouldn't. Again, all my stuff I think looks great, looks nice. We work really hard on look and feel, especially with movies and movie posters. And but if you're not telling your story, then you're just another dentist or whatever it is, and you're just going to go by the luck of the draw, whether you get more clients or patients or not.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a really good point, really important point. Now, I, I'm the other part of it is the know, like, trust factor. So people get to know you by the story, and if the story resonates with them, there's a level of like already before they've met you personally, right? So I think that
Absolutely.
that's the other thing that's really important there. So, in terms of telling a story in a business sense, what makes a good story, or what makes a good structure? Let's put it that way, because the story is dictated by what you've experienced, I guess.
That's true. I mean, I would start with the basics, and then sort of when I make a documentary, where I start with all of them. Now they weave and can get more complex, but look, there's the best way I think to share a story to begin with is look at the you know past, present, and future. And so, where did someone come from? What got them to here right now that is relevant to how they can serve the person in front of them? So, a lot of times, someone who becomes a money manager might have grown up broke and saw that their parents just didn't understand. They were never taught how you can get wealthy. I'm just making this up, but it's not an uncommon
Mm.
story. Or grew up so poor they had a hard time eating, and they knew they never wanted that to happen. So they spent all their waking hours, even as a child, learning about how money flows and moves and how you can make it and whatever. So I mean, there's something when you talk to anybody, there's something that drove you, that drives you. Again, my business coach Dan Sullivan, I'm going to quote him a lot because he's really smart. He says, there's two types of people. Batteries included, batteries not included. I only want to work with people who are batteries
Yeah.
included. They're people who are driven to do something. And it's people, when you work with someone who's driven to do something, there's a reason. Now, it could just be money. Those are typically the most boring people to work with. But
Mm.
typically, it's something that drives them. When you know as well as I do, when someone has become successful, their why has to be very strong. The why they're
Yeah.
doing this, and you only have to ask a few questions simply to get to the why. So the past just talks about your why. The present talks about what you're doing now, how innovative it is, and how you can help people. And then the future is, and here's my greater, broader mission and vision in the world. I'm working from my home office, so you can hear my dog barking. Sorry. So my greater mission and vision in the world. And so, if you don't have vision and a grander idea of the future, most people aren't real interested. They think you're sort of done. So if we just look at sort of this past, present, future, and where we came from, what drives us, and what we're doing now, and what our vision is, and how we want to help more people in the future, it's a pretty simple structure, but it's a great place for anybody to start.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, that's really good advice, and I'm fascinated the why, because I think one of the challenges that a lot of people have is really articulating their why in a way that makes sense to other people. Because I know that's a struggle for me in a way, because there's an intrinsic drive that I have, and I think I know my why, but articulating that to somebody else is a bit of a challenge.
It absolutely can be, but and it also, by the way, doesn't have to be that simple. I mean, so I would say I have multiple whys. I mean, I genuinely want to help people. I want to take care of my family. I want to make sure that I set a good example for my kids to be a contributor in society. I want to make sure we never starve. I want to make sure I can be creative and that I can bring creative parties together to do things. I have many whys. I mean,
Mm.
they all. We're complex people, so part of the better documentaries and what I've learned so much about storytelling is I used to sort of from like a PR angle. I would make the mistake early on to sort of try to sanitize things, and we all have that tendency, I think, to like let's just forget the bad stuff and just talk about the good stuff. But the more complex the story is, and the more complexity that you share as a human being, the more you resonate. And so it's turned out that the best characters in any of my movies are the ones who are just like characters. I mean, you just let them be who they are, and
Yeah.
they're just
Yeah.
fascinating people. And we're at the end of the day, we're fascinated by other human beings and how they got to where they are, especially if they're successful. Or I mean, if they're strung out on the side of the road on drugs, you want what got you. I mean, we want to know whether we stop and ask or not. We're interested. I mean, Larry King. You know who Larry King is?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so he's known here, well, I don't know around the world, but
Yeah.
iconic
No, he's
broadcaster.
pretty famous around the world.
All right, so he's one of the executive producers of my show, my talk show.
Okay.
And so
Mm.
Larry, when I was talking with him one day, he said, I don't know why other people don't do it, but I got known for, if you have a big red mark on your face, I'm going to ask you, how'd you get the big red mark? Like most people just are embarrassed or avoiding it. Like
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
curious, and I know the rest of the world is too. So why don't we just talk about that, and I'll learn the story, and we'll just move on. And so it's the thing that I love about storytelling, and where I think again a lot of people miss the boat, is so if someone says to me, "Hey Nick, I want you to go make a film on this organization." Okay, great. I'll do that. But what I'm going to start with is focusing on the people inside the organization, because no one cares about the organization, really.
Mm.
People want to know who are the people inside, why do they do it, and who are the people they're helping, whether that's a business or a nonprofit, and how are they helping them. Like that's fascinating. And the more and the more intriguing those stories are, the more unlikely those stories are, the better they are. I mean, we most of the most successful video features on TV or other places, they're based on human interest. They just have a backbone of something else that draws you together. So, we have in America, college football is a big deal. We have ESPN, the sports network. They do stuff every Saturday morning before college football. It's all about football players, but it has really nothing, not very much to do with football. It's about their story of how they lost an arm and then still fought, fought to get to play football still. And so people it's the person. Focus on the person. Focus on the
Mm.
people. That makes everything else fascinating. And just I think a lot of people miss that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's great advice, and I think, I think putting that into a marketing context as well. People talk about B2B and B2C marketing, and kind of as if, B2B are two organisations, but then B2C as if the consumer is kind of an organisation or a group of people. But at the end of the day, it's exactly what you said. It's people dealing with people. So focusing on the people is always going to build those relationships and build the empathy and build the connection much quicker, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And yeah, I mean, there are some automated transactions in our life, and maybe more, but typically what led you to trusting that automated transaction is typically a person. So,
Mm.
whether they work for the organization or not. But yeah, I look, I haven't worked with every industry, but I've worked with people from startup to billions and billions, and relationships seem to still be the most important part of all those things.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Well, it's still at the end of the day, the decisions still end up being made by people.
Right.
So it comes back to that relationship thing. So you mentioned about other people sharing your story. So how can you build a really captivating story that, first of all, captivates people's interest at level one and gets empathy and gets engagement, but then also at level two gets them to share that story with their friends and their connections and say, "Hey, take a look at this. This is really great stuff."
Sure. So many people aspire to tell their story in a fashion that's, a podcast like this or on stage or from a major news network where, you're speaking as one person, but you're just millions of people are watching it, right? That's where most people aspire to. And, look, that's sometimes happens, sometimes doesn't, but I don't, that's not that important, I don't think, where, or that's not what you should focus on. What you
Mm.
should focus on is, look, being two things in every conversation you have: be interested in the other person and what they're trying to accomplish and what their goals are, and be interesting. And if you do those two things and you have a connected conversation, it will become very clear, it has been in my experience, what's interesting and what people pick up on and what they go with. And as you have more of those connected conversations, you're going to find yourself repeating a lot of the same things, weaving in new things, and it's going to take some time, but you're going to have a story that you're telling. And as you get better and better at telling that story, it's going to get more interesting because you're going to learn what are the pieces of your story that are interesting. I mean, when I work on, well, there's a lot of feature films. I mean, there's a very famous one here, Rudy, which I did the documentary. It's a very famous movie
Mm.
based around football, but it's one of the best movies ever written. And the impetus for that movie, I don't want to minimize it, but I do in a way. Rudy played two plays in one football game his entire college career, but his story that went around that made it an iconic, one of the top 10 sports movies of all time. And so the way he learned to share his story, because it wasn't about those two plays, those were two things that would make people pay attention, but it was
Yeah.
how it was his struggle to get there. He didn't even take the standardized test that you have to take to get into the university, so he technically couldn't get in, but he made relationships and worked really hard and did what they told him to do so he could get in. They said he'd never make the football team too small. He works hard, and so it becomes this. It's the details, right? And so
Mm.
figuring out which of those details people find most humanizing and find most relevant to what they think you can do for them. And so it's trial and error, like everything else. They say if you want to create a webinar and you want to automate it, Russell Brunson says it's all done. Just do it every day or once a week 100 times before you even think about automating it, because you're going to figure out what works and what doesn't. But most people make the mistake of, like, and it's not uncommon, like, hey, I'm going to write my story and that's going to be my story. Well,
Yeah.
you may want to do it a bunch before you finalize it. And what story is ever done being told? Well, that's not a I'm not looking forward to that day myself. So let's just keep living in the story. And I my story evolves as things are more interesting to me or more present in my life. Certainly, I've got three kids that are 14, 11, and 8. So my world changes along with theirs. There's different
Yeah,
things we
yeah.
do as a family. There's different things you have to process with children of different ages to know how to help them identify people who aren't there to help them and things like that. And so, that I think, I tell a lot of my clients, I have clients come to me. We have a big annual event every year in Hollywood. And clients come to me all the time and say, hey, Nick, here's my budget for next year. How should I spend it? I say two things. Number one, I'm really glad you asked me that question because it proves my model. Because you feel comfortable with me to tell me how much money you have and ask me how you
Mm.
should spend it, and that's because I've taken the time to build trust with you and I've shared my story. And it also proves that the reason why you're willing to do that is because I've done everything that I'm telling you should do, and you should too on some level. But what do you want to do first? Do what you're most excited about, because if you're most excited about it, you're going to talk about it a lot, and it's going to propel you. It's going to give you momentum because you're just
Mm.
can't wait to tell more people about it. And so that's how you should be with your story too. If telling your story is boring you, then you need to look at what you're doing,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
if you're not inspired, you're certainly not going to inspire the person on the other end of the conversation. And so what tell the part of the story that is exciting to you right now. And then typically they'll say, well, what, that's cool, but like you, how did how did you get to this point? Where did that come from? And when someone's genuinely interested in learning more about you because you've engaged them, you'll start telling your story. It's I mean, it's almost impossible not to, right?
Mm. Yeah, yeah, that's a great point. And I like what you said there about if you're not passionate, if telling the story is boring, then clearly you're not passionate about that particular part of your story or your life.
Right.
And that's a big red warning sign, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
And I
Right
know
on.
I've yeah, I know I got to that point a little while ago in my corporate career before I eventually, and I kind of lived in that space for quite some time before I finally realized that, hey, I need to do something here. I need to make a change. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Now, speaking of stories, I heard you tell a story about how you became an Emmy Award winning film producer, how you actually decided you wanted to be a film producer and win an Emmy. So tell us a little bit about how you went about that.
I just Googled how to win an Emmy and I followed the directions. And, it was pretty interesting. It said, look, uh, your production quality needs to be great. I mean, because it's easier and more inexpensive than ever. It's cheaper than it's ever been to do. I mean, with iPhones and great cameras and access to software and all that stuff, like, this shouldn't be that hard. But most importantly, you need to execute. Well, you need to execute well on that. But most importantly, you need to find a great story. And I knew that the story that I had was a great story. And so if I could execute well on the fundamentals, then it would be a great story. So I may not win an Emmy on my first try. I mean, that was pretty unusual. I think, but I tried not to reinvent the wheel. I
Mm.
said, how does this work? Um, share, like digital mentoring. I googled it. What should I do? And so you know I also learned from years and years of working in the music business. Like, I play guitar. I've been playing guitar for 33 years. I'm not bad. I can play about anything I want, but I'm not the best guitar player. When I went to go to Nashville and LA and New York and I saw people playing, my jaw dropped. I'm like, okay, well,
Yeah.
I don't need to do that. Why don't I just pay that guy to do that? And I play drums even worse. So I just pay the guy to play drums. And let me just stick in my lane. That's why I write. I'm a songwriter. I love it. I can, yeah, I can carry a tune. Yeah, I can play guitar, but there's people who, like, the world will stop everything and spend thousands of dollars to go put 10,000 people in an arena to do that. I realize that's not me, but what part of the equation do I fit the best? So if it, for me with films, it was like, okay, I've been through this before. I found a great story. I know I can connect with people. I can definitely do the interviews. Let me go hire the best cinematographers I can find and afford, the best editors. Let me build a team that they can all use their unique abilities to support mine. And that's, I didn't have the vocabulary for that at the time, but it's really all it takes, I think, to be successful in about anything. Like, what am I great at? And what do I love doing? What am I passionate about? What would I do every day for free? But I'm so good at it, people would pay me. Let me just keep working on that. Let me build teams of people around me that can fill in the gaps. And, when you got a team, you can accomplish a lot more.
Hmm. Yeah, that I think there's a great lesson in that for any business that, um, you know, in small business, there's a big tendency, and I've fallen into that trap very early on as well, to try to do everything. I can do that. I know how to do that. Like you say, you might know how to play guitar, you might know how to do drums, but it's not necessarily what your strength is. And it takes time away from doing things that you are really good at. And by building a team around you of specialists that are good at different things and pulling that team together, you actually can achieve a hell of a lot more.
Exactly. Yep.
Mm. All right. Now, one of the things I'm really interested in is building that emotional connection with people when you're doing those interviews. I mean, is there something that, are there things that you do to set that path or set the course there, or is it just a natural ability that is intuitive?
Um, I think a lot of it is intuitive. I think most importantly, from the time, just because of my personality and the way I was raised, from the time I get there, I want everyone there to know that I'm there. Like, I'm here to tell your story. I'm here to serve you. Like, I'm not here, screaming, I want, fizzy water. Like, I'm here to tell your story. And I try to make it that my entire crew is just, it's very important that they're all very just easygoing, likable, fun, make people relaxed as opposed to self-conscious. And then we work through figuring out, all right, what's our best way? Uh, how is this going to be most comfortable? Like, I did an interview with Richard Branson one time, and he was very kindly giving me a few minutes between other interviews that someone else had tried to sabotage. But I emailed him. He was like, "No, no, no, I will give it to you. Just find me." Well, I ran and found him, and he said, "Oh my gosh, I thought that's the interview I just did. Sure, interview me right here." And my crew, the normal thing to do, the smart normal thing to do would have been to mic him up, like, drop a lavalier microphone on and get ready. And I saw what the last people had done interviewing. They put all these lighting scrims all around his head, and it was so uncomfortable for him that he just
Mm,
was miserable. So I just told my crew, I'm like, just forget about all that. We'll fix it later. I knew we had good enough audio on the camera. We could, because just having Richard in the movie was more important than about anything else, right? And so I just said, "Hey, Richard, tell me." He's like, "What do you want to do?" I was like, "No, just talk to me right here. We're fine." It's like, "All right, I'll just stand by this tree." And we had a great. And he spent like way longer with me than he had committed to. He was laughing. He was blowing kisses at the camera. We had a great time. We connected, and then I said, "Thanks so much." Where he's like, "That's all you needed." I'm like, "Yeah, it was great. Thanks so much." Like, "Great. Anything else you need, tell me." And so I just wanted to make it easy and enjoyable for him. And it's funny. I mean, most crews that come in somewhere, doesn't matter where you come into, the crew is typically, I would say from my experience, they sort of feel like entitled, like everything is usually, like, think of a movie set. Everything that happens around there is the what goes on tape is the most important thing. So they sort of get in this entitled attitude, like they're the most important thing in the room, or they're the reason why everyone's there, and they'll move stuff around, not put it back. And like, I'll finish a film, and we first of all, I always ask, "Can I move? Is it okay to move this? We want to try to get a shot here." But if they're not comfortable, I'm like, "We'll work around it." I'm more worried about the individual I'm interviewing being comfortable than a shot. I will sacrifice an angle for personality that I'm not going to lose from the person. And then when we're done, I typically help make sure like everything is exactly where it was before, because why not make it easy? So my goal is to make
mm,
our crew the easiest crew in the world ever to work with. Then anytime you work with someone else, there's such a stark contrast. You're like, man, I wish Nick and his guys were here. They just made this so easy. Now we got these guys in here, messing up the place, not putting things back. And so I just try to make it from the moment we get there that, hey, we're here to serve you. Thank you so much for your time. We Let's make this as transparent, as easy for you as possible. And just things that naturally would set people at ease and let them know, okay, I can relax, because most people don't spend a lot of time on camera. It's not, I also
yeah,
don't
yeah.
try to get people to talk to a camera. That's a tough skill to learn. I try to get people to talk to me, and I just film off angly enough to where it looks right. People often, when I do sort of more commercial work with people, a lot of times they'll ask for a teleprompter, and I'm like, how have you used a teleprompter before? Have you read? Why? No. Well, then I'm not giving you one now because that's a very hard skill to learn and look
Mm.
natural. So I just try to keep it as natural as possible. If you let people be themselves naturally, they're gonna come across best. Even if it's not polished, it'll still be best. And editing is our friend too.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's a lot of great pointers in that, and I think I'm going to have to listen to this again and make some notes because I think there's lessons there for doing a podcast too. And it's always my aim to try to make the guest feel really comfortable initially, but all the preparation and leaving things as they were when you leave. And yeah, there's lots of good tips there. So thanks for that.
No problem.
Now, one of the other things in terms of sharing stories, how do you go about, and this is going back to the branding angle, I guess, how do you go about determining where the best place is to share those stories so that they reach the right audience?
Um, that's always a wild card. I mean, really, the more I do this, the more I'm learning that at the very beginning, at least, you should build momentum by starting where the people are who would most like to hear that story. So I just did a film not long ago that we won some Emmys for about post traumatic stress disorder and soldiers coming home from war and service dogs helping them and helping them not commit suicide and helping them live normal lives. And so, the best place to start promoting a movie like that is in service member communities or,
Mm.
animal lover communities or service dog communities. And then you can build momentum and keep sort of stringing out from there. But, it's so many people. I'm making a series right now, actually, on a big podcaster named James Altucher. And, James has a book called Choose Yourself, and I love the idea. It mirrors what I've been talking about for so many years to musicians I work with or people who want to get into something like entertainment because it's a popular field, and
Yeah.
they keep waiting for that one person to come by and dub them, worthy
Give
and
them
make them
permission. Yeah.
famous or
Yeah.
whatever. And if I always have said, like, so James starts with, why don't you just choose yourself? Like, yes, choose yourself as the one who can go do this. And then, I've always said, instead of waiting around for that, instead of doing everything you can to strategically position yourself for that one person to find you and sign you to a record deal or as an actor or whatever, why don't you just start building a fan base and sharing what it is that you do? Whatever you do first is not going to be your best stuff. That'd be kind of depressing if it was, by the way.
Mm.
None of us would
Yeah.
want to be like, just did my first painting, never going to do a better
Yeah.
one. I mean, that's not fun. So, find your audience, find it by doing it. I had a friend call me the other day and say, hey, I've got this great idea for this really cool show. Who should I pitch that to? And I said, you shouldn't pitch that to anybody. You should just go start doing it on social media. It's a format that will work, and that's where everything's going anyway. Build an audience with it. Like, find people who are interested in food and culture and music and all the things you're talking about, and take them on your journey. And if it works, there'd be plenty of people who want to partner with you and make it higher production quality or whatever. But just go start. And so, uh, um, I don't remember the exact question, but that was my answer.
Yeah, yeah, great. Yeah. So give yourself permission to do whatever it is you need to do. Yeah.
Right.
And build the community around what it is that you've got.
Yeah, I mean, it's not very often that people. Yeah, I mean, I have award-winning movies that sadly not nearly enough people have watched, but it's because, like many of us, I focused more, on the art than the distribution or the promotion of it or the audience for it. And so obviously you get better. Then sometimes you're just wrong, by the way. Sometimes
Mm.
I really think everyone's going to love this and you're just wrong. Um, Thankfully not too often, but you know, but I also, that's not really, I mean, finding good stories and everything else is, I love doing that. I don't particularly love going out to find the audience for it, but there's people that's their job. They like figure out where's the best distribution outlets for this, or what's the best PR I need to put together for this, or what's the best marketing I need to put together for this. There are people who do these things for a living. There's like a real system for these things. So look, you can't always hire all those people to get started, but a lot of cases you can, you work out deals with people who are not as experienced but passionate about it. And just, I've just always found that working with passionate people, the smartest, most passionate people I can find, between us, we can figure it out.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, that kind of prompted me to think about the way you actually fund these movies, which I find quite fascinating. So tell us a little bit about your approach to that, because I think there's, you talked earlier about the role of the director and how you decided that, your strength was in connecting with people and talking to them and bringing out their story. And then you gathered a team of people around you that did all the other things that were involved in making a film. But uh, the idea of building the finance for that and the way you do that, I think is fascinating. So tell us how you go about that.
Thank you. Of course, I have some films where someone just comes and says, "Hey, how much?" and they pay me, and that's
Yeah.
nice and easy. But when I'm trying to tell a story for a project that I want to tell the story, there's way more stories than I could possibly afford to tell. And I've realized that the experiences, if I can create experiences and value for people around these stories, whether that's the experience of being involved in learning how this all works, or spending time with, when I did Brian Tracy's documentary, or Jack Canfield from Chicken Soup for the Soul, or Jay Abraham, people want to spend time with them, so
Mm.
they would pay some money to spend some time with them and be a part of this process and the project. And not as an investor. I not that I wouldn't in the future, but thus far I've taken no investments. It's all just been, I like what you're doing, Nick, and you've given me enough value. You're going to exchange enough value that I'll give you some money to be a part of the process. And we can all, everyone can put in a minimal amount of money and not risk their life, and ride along with a group, collective, collaborative project that has a greater outcome than any one person is putting in. And I just found a way to to attract and gather the people together who I thought would want to go on that journey, and thankfully we've done that a lot of times. And so to me, it really is just, obviously I have a reason I want to tell the story. The more it resonates with other people who want to tell the story, the better. But then also, okay, I realize that's what I want. What does everybody else want? How can I put together, a list of deliverables and valuable things that are valuable to them, so that so they'll give me what I want. And so doing that, and not in a transactional way, in a relational way, like, hey, if I were in their shoes, what would I want? How would I want to be treated? Cool. Let me create the coolest experience that they'll rave about, and those become the stories that they're going to tell forever. I have so many clients bring me other friends who want to get involved in documentary films and stuff with me. And by the way, whenever I try to tell this stuff to people in the entertainment industry, they don't get it at all. And a lot of times they think I must be lying to people. They're like, why would people ever give you money without a return on investment? I was like, well, they're getting a return on their investment, just not dollars for giving
Mm.
me that. They're getting, a return on investment of investing in themselves and learning more and positioning themselves, and spending time with really unique people who can give them unique perspective, and then being able to share that they were part of this film, and being able to share those values through a well put together film with other people. Like, there's a lot that goes into it. They just are so money focused that they can't possibly understand how I could do this and people would be happy about it without
Yeah.
getting dollars in return.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it comes back to, I mean, I think that's a wonderful model, and it comes back to providing an experience for people. And something you said there in that answer that I think is really critical, and it goes to the core of all marketing, but it's sort of at the core of your values as well. And that's to understand what values people have and what their expectations are and what they're actually looking for, having empathy with them and kind of figuring out what is it that they would value as in terms of an experience or something, and it's not necessarily money.
Many times it's not, and that is,
Hmm.
that's sort of like when selling. Most people go to price fastest to try to discount to get a sale. It's like, well,
Yeah.
you're valuing the wrong thing. I mean, price is irrelevant when, like, so price is only an issue when the value is a mystery. If people
Mm.
don't know why it's valuable, they're not going to pay you. But I mean, if I tell you a story and I say, if you give me $100, and I can, and if I can guarantee this, I can't. But if I could, you get my point. Every time you give me $100, I give you 1,000 back. Well, you'll have no problem finding me as many hundreds as you can find to get 1,000 back. But when, first of all, that breaks down when you're dishonest and you're like, oh, I got this great plan and there's no holes in it. There's what,
Mm.
and they give you 100 and they, they don't get 1,000 back. That's a problem. But also, just also, the first thing I've explained a value, that's very easy to see the value. There's an extra $900, but most people go straight to the money as opposed to, like, what are the things that are surrounding this concept that actually have value. And that's when you dig into that, you'll find there's there's so much more value in things than the money. And
Mm.
that's a really, really fun place to spend time, because when you find people who are interested in more than money, that's they're interesting, and you can go a lot deeper because you're not worried about, the simplest thing, which is the money.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I love that quote. I'll have to remember that one. Price is only important when the value is a mystery. The
Yeah.
yeah, the other, I guess the other thing for me, I mean, money is important in our world, but really
Sure.
money is only a means to um, build another experience, isn't it? So
It's
if you provide experiences, then that's of value if it's a good experience for the person experiencing it.
Yeah, money is just one form of exchanging value,
Mm.
right? And there's many others. I mean, it could be a hug, whatever.
Yeah,
But like that's just it's one means. Now you need it. I'm not gonna say I don't. I mean, I got a home here with a pool and a lake, and I you
yeah,
need
that's
money. I
right.
mean, and I enjoy nice cars and fun stuff, but it's not it's not at the core of why I do what I do. And so I think everyone understands for the most part. You get weirdos every now and then. I'm sure you do too. But people think that it's ridiculous that you need to make money. But as long as most of the normal free world understands you need money to survive. And so, okay, let me tell you what. Let's put that aside, and let me tell you what I can do for you, and let me tell you what I've proven that it's worth, or what I think it's worth if you haven't sold a lot of it yet. And if that aligns with what you need, we can move forward. If not, tell me what doesn't align. Maybe we can fix it, or maybe we're just not a good fit. But
Mm.
it's very easy to get past the money when you go to the value, because that's what we all buy. I mean, whether we want to admit it or not, it could be the value of the quick hit of dopamine from buying a piece of chocolate. You're buying the
Yeah,
value that you're going to get out of it, right?
yeah.
And people have used that for good and for many more evil things. But
Mm.
that's just, I mean, much like I've learned to go where the audience is. I've learned to sort of not try to change the way humanity operates.
Yeah. All right. Well, this is absolutely fascinating, Nick. I could go on talking for ages with you and following up on your experience. And I know you've also recently started a documentary series, Masters of Success, which is something I'd encourage people to look up. And I'm sure there's lots of learnings and insights there that you're sharing with people. But I think looking at the time, it's probably a good time to move on to the Buzz, which is our innovation round. And it's designed to help our audience who are primarily innovators and leaders in their field with some tips from your experience. So there's 5 questions, and hopefully you'll give us some really snappy, insightful answers that'll inspire people to go and do something awesome today.
Cool. Let's go.
Not that they need permission, right?
Right, right.
Yeah. All right. So what's the number one thing you think anyone needs to do to be more innovative?
To be more innovative, I would say you need to look at uh, the way it's being. Try to find the gap between what's being done now, what the product, service, value being provided, and what others on the other side really want. And so, if you look at the method of delivery now, and then you put yourself in the shoes of the other side and say, well, what would make it better? What would make it more exciting? What would make it more fun? What would make it have more value? Ask those types of questions, and it's easy to be innovative, because you'll find that most people are just sort of phoning it in. They're not, most people out in the marketplace are not constantly obsessed with how to make the experience of the customer better. And so if you just one easy way is take what they're giving them and just figure out how to make it even better for the end user. And that's one pretty simple way. I mean, we do that all the time with our products and services as well. Are we missing the boat on what they really want? We didn't think we were, but maybe we are. So what do they really want? And let's put that in, and so that you innovate and you try to create what it is that creates the most value for people on the other end.
Yeah, I love that. So it's sort of focusing on value, focusing on the gaps between what's there now and what could be, and also looking at it from the point of view of your user, your client. Great. What's the best thing you've done to develop new ideas?
The best thing I've done to develop new ideas is get out of my normal routines. So I always get my best ideas when I'm not in my office or doing the things I plan to do. I get my best ideas when I'm running, or when I'm having a great conversation in another city with a friend, or I'm watching a movie on an airplane. And I'm thinking, oh, how does that connect? But removing myself from the pressures of delivering something, and just letting myself sort of experience whatever whatever the moment I'm in is and whatever that has to offer, whether that's again a great conversation or great nature, whatever it is. If you allow yourself to connect with whatever it is in front of you, you get, I don't know, at least I get creative. I get
Mm.
ideas.
Yeah, yeah. So you switch off from the everyday kind of routines and be present in wherever you are right then. And often, I find that often in those situations, you see something and it just forms an unconscious connection with an issue or problem or a question that you're dealing with.
All the time. I mean, and that,
Mm.
I don't know, I've ever explained it that way, and it sounds very mythical or something, but no, truly, like, yeah, when you get out of when you get off the emails that you have 47 left to answer, and you put down the book that you have 37 pages left to read, and you just go do something else that sort of just is whatever you feel like doing, that is sounds better than doing that. You can't do it all the time, you got to do the work,
Mm.
but just sort of getting out of the normal ruts of things that don't inspire you, and spend time with people in places that inspire you.
Yeah, great. Now, do you have a resource, a favorite resource that you use most often?
Favorite resource, I probably Google.
Yeah.
Um, that and my other favorite resource I use most often is my team that I've built of people who are around me who are so much better than me at so many things. So, for instance, I love interviewing people, but I also didn't want to ever be. I did some interviews before where I got some good stuff, but I don't like doing a lot of research on things. So I realized, hey, I could do much better interviews if I just paid someone to do the research and had them give me the bullet points. So now I know if I'm going to interview somebody, like I've paid someone who really loves digging back in someone's past and finding the most interesting things that a lot of people may not know about, and let's talk about those. So
Mm.
I'm prepared for most of my interviews now by reviewing for like 20 minutes. Yeah, I reviewed for like 20 minutes, and then I have it with me like an iPad, and I never, I go down any road that's interesting that they like going down. But when we finish that road, or if they're not interested in it, just go to the next thing. And so
Mm.
now my interviews are much better because someone else prepared for me. And that
Yeah.
was an easy thing, but something you sometimes you wouldn't think that you could do that. Like, oh, I gotta do all this. Well, no, find resources around you that love doing that and let them do it.
Mm. Yeah, that's great advice. So the team aspect, and I think that's come out in our conversation before. So great. Now, what's the best way to keep a project on track?
Um, It's a great question. Have somebody who's responsible for that. So I'm always thinking about. Obviously, I know what my deadlines are and things are coming up. So I'm pretty good at juggling projects. But I have a couple people who, I will tell them, here's what I need to happen by this time, and if I'm the one holding you up, feel free to take me to task for it. And
Mm.
so they are responsible for making sure this gets scheduled, that gets done. That so I would say again, allowing those who are great at organizing things like that, let them lay it out. And if you're in charge, you and the client agree to it. But then, and have good lines of communication so that because things do happen, sometimes things go awry. And
Mm.
so, I don't know, just finding people and ways to organize. And again, for me, it's I'll quote him again, Dan Sullivan. He says, look, most of us by the time we get to where we are in our lives, we're looking for more who's, not more hows. Like I don't want to know how to do it. I want to
Yeah.
know who can do it and who can do it effectively, efficiently, and do it well. Just give me the who. That's what I
Mm.
want.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. I love that too. Looking for more who's than hows. Yeah.
Yes.
Great. Now, last question of the buzz round is what's the number one thing anyone can do to differentiate yourself? And I think we've probably talked about this one.
I mean, be yourself. Look at
Mm.
what are the pivotal moments in your life that you feel like led you to where you are right now. And some of those are painful. Some of those you have to discover, why am I thinking of that when I'm thinking this, when they seem seemingly disconnected. And sometimes they're not relevant, but most of the time they are.
Mm. And tell your story.
Yep.
All right. Well, thanks, Nick. This has been really great. Now, where can people find out more about you and maybe even reach out and say thank you for what you've shared with us today?
Oh, thanks. I'm on all the social media. My handle is Nick Nanton everywhere. Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. And then nicknanton.com is easy, or just Google me. Use one of my favorite resources and you'll find the websites, the films, all that stuff.
Great. Yeah. And we'll make it easy for people by linking to most of those in the show notes as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So what's the number one piece of advice you'd like to leave the listener with as we wrap up?
Number one piece of advice, be you. Everybody else is taken, but embrace what that is and figure out what your unique ability is, because many of us fight that for many years. And then it's sort of like when you figure it out, life gets so much easier. So, yeah.
All right. And finally, then, who would you like me to have a chat with on a future InnovaBuzz podcast, and why?
Man, I got so many people I could send you to. I want to give you somebody good, so I'm going to make it suspenseful, and I will.
Okay.
I'll think about it, and I'll send you an email and get you somebody good.
All right, great. I appreciate that. Thanks, Nick. And thanks so much for sharing your time and your wisdom and insights and stories with us today on the InnovaBuzz podcast. I've really enjoyed this, and loved the conversation around storytelling, structuring stories, building a team around you, finding the who instead of the why, and focusing on empathy with your clients and with your audience. So many great learnings in that. And thanks again. I wish you all the best for the future, and let's keep in touch.
Thanks for the talk. Appreciate it. Take care.
Thanks. I hope you enjoyed that insightful and informative conversation with Nick and took something away from his episode. Nick's story is certainly inspirational, and how he serves his clients and his audience is a great model for all of us producing content for an audience. And I love his quote of "Price is only an issue when the value is a mystery." I'd love to know what you took away from Nick's episode. Leave a comment below the blog post, which you can find at innovabiz.co/Nick Nanton. That is NICKNANTON. All lowercase, all one word, innovabiz.co/Nick Nanton. You'll also find contact information for getting in touch with Nick there, as well as links to his website, his many books, his many films, and the DNA Celebrity Branding Agency. Nick suggested we have a conversation with Greg Rowlett of Ambitious Media Group and with Lindsay Dix of Celebrity Sites on future InnovaBuzz podcast episodes. So Greg and Lindsay, keep an eye on your inboxes for an invitation from us to the InnovaBuzz podcast, courtesy of Nick Nanton. Remember to check out our Marketing Master mini class at innovabiz.co/Marketing Master. It's completely free and my gift to you for being my podcast listener. And it's also accessible without even giving away your email. But most importantly, in less than 30 minutes, you'll gain absolute clarity about who your ideal client is and how you can communicate with them to build and strengthen an engaging, enduring relationship. And if you'd like our help to go even deeper into marketing mastery or help with podcast production, then send me an email to jurgen@innovabiz.co and we'll set up a quick call just to have a conversation and find out if indeed we're even a good fit for one another. Tune in again next week to the InnovaBuzz podcast. We've got some more fantastic guests lined up, including Heather Lee Dyer, author of Creativity Over Perfection, and Bob Dick, a change consultant. Stay connected with us by subscribing to the InnovaBuzz podcast at innovabuzz.com/subscribe. innovabuzz.com/subscribe. Make sure you never miss another episode. It would also mean a lot to me if you leave us a review, because what you think matters. I'd love to hear your thoughts, your ideas, your suggestions, or questions you have, so go ahead and share them in the comments below the blog post for this episode. Until next time, I'm Jurgen Strauss from InnovaBiz. Remember, be awesome and keep innovating.